Hey, Blackie, go serve. The words cracked through the grand hall like glass shattering on marble. Laughter followed sharp, rehearsed, cruel. At the center of the storm, 5 figures stood gleaming in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos, the billionaire family everyone knew by name. Their smiles weren't just amusement, they were weapons. Naomi Carter froze for only a second. She wore a simple yellow dress, no diamonds, no logos, no armor but her own composure. In the swirl of white gowns and black suits, her presence alone made her a target. Phones tilted subtly. A few heads turned. Some guests smirked, others winced. But the family kept laughing, one pointing a manicured finger like she'd spotted the evening's entertainment. Naomi lifted her chin, calm, steady. Inside, her heartbeat tapped against her ribs, but her eyes never broke. She had been here before, different cities, different rooms, the same sneer that said, "You don't belong." She reached into her clutch, pulled out her phone, and pressed it to her ear. Her voice was low, steady enough to chill the air. "Dad," she whispered, "it's happening again." The family didn't notice the words. They were too busy performing their cruelty for the room. One of the sons leaned forward, champagne in hand, his grin sharp. "Don't look so lost, sweetheart. Maybe grab us another round?" More laughter, loud, expansive, the kind that fills space with arrogance. The mother in navy blue threw her head back, diamonds flashing in the chandelier light. "Oh, look at her face, priceless." Naomi's hand didn't tremble. Her voice didn't crack. She just walked 2 steps forward into the light of the hall, where everyone could see her clearly. Around her, the party chatter softened into a hush. Guests began to sense this wasn't just another cruel joke. Something was shifting. She pressed the phone closer, her words measured like a verdict. "Cancel the deal. Now." The line went silent for a breath. Then a calm voice on the other end answered, "Understood." Naomi lowered the phone, her gaze sweeping the marble floor, the golden chairs, the faces suddenly uncertain. The billionaire family still chuckled, unaware they had just torn open the floor beneath their own empire. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now back to Naomi. Naomi Carter hadn't planned to stand out. Not tonight. The gala at the Metropolitan Atrium was meant to be about contracts, handshakes, the quiet elegance of money moving silently from one empire to another. She arrived alone, no entourage, no velvet ropes rolled back in her honor, just a yellow dress, her natural hair haloed around her face, and the kind of composure that doesn't beg for attention but commands it anyway. She knew how these rooms worked. She'd walked into them since childhood, trailing behind her father, Elijah Carter, the black CEO whose hospitality group had swallowed half the skyline of New York. She'd seen the smiles that slipped when he entered, the way allies could turn into doubters the moment they saw his skin before his title. Tonight wasn't her father's entrance, though. Tonight was hers. And it wasn't as a Carter heir. It was as a young woman choosing to appear ordinary, invisible even, in a place where worth was measured in labels and last names. She chose the dress because it was simple. She chose to come without an introduction because she wanted to see who would treat her as equal and who would show their hand the second they thought she didn't matter. The family that mocked her failed the test instantly. Their empire, valued at $750 million, was negotiating the biggest deal of their lives with her father. They didn't know that. They saw a black woman in a plain dress and decided she must be the help. Naomi felt the sting, yes. The words "go serve" echoed like a whip crack, carrying her back to memories she had never fully shaken. 16 years old, waiting in a hotel lobby in Charlotte, told she couldn't sit there because she looked out of place. 22, traveling in Europe, mistaken for staff in a 5-star lounge while holding a first-class ticket. Different settings, same dismissal. Those moments had shaped her steel. She looked at the family's laughter now and recognized it for what it was, recycled arrogance. What they didn't see was the quiet storm building behind her stillness. Around the room, murmurs began. Some guests whispered her name, uncertain, wondering if they had just witnessed something much bigger than bad manners. Others pulled out their phones, recording discreetly. They might not know Naomi Carter personally, but they knew a Carter carried weight. Naomi slipped her phone back into her clutch, her face unreadable. This was no longer about her feelings, it was about dignity. about principle. She'd given the signal to her father, and the wheels were already turning. The billionaires across the hall still smirked, unaware that their fortunes were being recalculated in real time. To them, she was a nobody. To everyone else watching, she was suddenly a question mark, a spark in a room about to ignite. The laughter didn't stop, it grew. The son leaned back in his chair, lifting his glass like a man awarding himself victory. She's still standing here? What part of Get Us Drinks was hard to understand? The mother in navy silk placed her hand dramatically on her chest, her voice carrying just enough for nearby tables to hear. Bless her heart, she thinks she's a guest. The words slid through the air like poison, each syllable polished for maximum humiliation. Naomi's eyes didn't move. She had learned long ago that silence unsettles more than shouting ever could. But silence is dangerous. Too, it gives arrogance room to spread. And spread it did. The father of the family, gray-haired with a watch that gleamed like a spotlight, snapped his fingers toward a security guard posted near the edge of the hall. Take her outside. She's crashing the event. The guard hesitated, eyes flicking between Naomi's steady composure and the powerful family summoning him. His training told him to act. His instincts told him to pause. In that hesitation, guests began whispering louder. She said Carter, didn't she? One voice muttered. Wait, Naomi Carter? From the Carter Group? Another asked, phone raised discreetly. The whispers crawled like electricity across the room, but the family didn't hear it, or chose not to. The daughter, younger, blonde, draped in diamonds, smirked as she snapped a photo of Naomi on her phone. This is going on my story. #gatecrasher. A flicker passed through Naomi's eyes, not anger, but memory. 18 years old, walking into a restaurant her father partly owned, only to be mistaken for the coat check girl. She carried the coats anyway, handed them back without a word. That night, she promised herself, never again. The security guard finally stepped forward, his steps heavy against the marble. Ma'am, he said, voice cautious, I'll need to see your invitation. Naomi opened her clutch. Inside, the golden envelope shimmered, embossed with her family crest. She didn't take it out. Instead, she let the guard see just enough before closing it again. You'll regret touching me, she said softly, words cut clean and sharp. The family erupted again, mistaking restraint for weakness. The son clapped mockingly. Oh, she's rehearsed. Someone's been watching too many courtroom dramas. Phones tilted higher. Guests leaned closer. The air, once filled with music and laughter, was shifting into something heavier, something charged. Naomi stood her ground, her silence no longer a shield but a stage. She didn't need to raise her voice. She had already set the collapse in motion. And the family? They were still laughing, still blind to the ground giving way beneath them. The security guard's hand hovered, uncertain, waiting for Naomi to hand over proof or step aside. The room was leaning toward spectacle now, guests craning their necks, phones tilted like spotlights, capturing every flicker of tension. Naomi didn't move. She stood rooted, her yellow dress glowing under the chandelier's light, her posture calm as stone. Silence stretched, thick and heavy, until it became unbearable for everyone but her. The father of the billionaire family slammed his glass down on the table, the sharp ring of crystal against marble slicing through the hush. Why are we wasting time? He barked. Escort her out. Now. The guard shifted again but didn't touch her. Something in Naomi's stillness pressed against his instincts, warning him that this wasn't a simple removal. He glanced around the hall and saw too many lenses pointing his way. Naomi finally raised her eyes. Her voice, when it came, was measured and steady. Do you know what arrogance sounds like? She asked the guard, not loud, not theatrical, but enough for the nearest microphones to catch. The billionaire son laughed, slapping the table. Oh, she's delivering monologues now. This is priceless. Naomi didn't look at him. She kept her gaze on the guard, a quiet steel behind her words. It sounds exactly like this moment. A ripple moved through the guests. Not applause, not yet, but recognition. They could feel the lines sharpening, the stage being drawn. The daughter in diamonds raised her phone higher, giggling as she framed Naomi in the shot. Smile, sweetheart. You're trending. Naomi didn't smile. She didn't frown either. Her stillness was a kind of defiance, a refusal to feed their narrative. Years of watching her father navigate boardrooms where he was underestimated had taught her the same lesson. Dignity outlasts noise. Inside, her pulse was steady. She thought of Charlotte, that hotel lobby at 16. She thought of the restaurant at 18. She thought of the countless times someone measured her worth by clothes, by skin, by silence. Each memory layered into the armor she wore tonight, armor invisible to those too blind to see it. The guard finally spoke again, his voice lower, respectful. "Ma'am, if you just show me your invitation, we can end this." Naomi tilted her head, almost gently. "I already did." And she had enough to make him doubt, enough to remind him that touching her might cost more than his job. Across the hall, the family grew restless, their laughter thinning into irritation. The mother's voice cut sharp. "This is ridiculous. Throw her out before she embarrasses us any further." But the truth was already seeping in. Naomi's silence wasn't weakness. It was weight. It was pressure. It was a countdown. And though the family still couldn't see it, everyone else in the room could feel it. Something inevitable was coming. The tension was no longer confined to Naomi and the family. It had seeped into the hall itself. The chandeliers still glittered. The orchestra still played faintly in the background. But the room's true soundtrack was silence broken only by whispers and the faint clicks of cameras being raised. Near the back, a young woman in a black blazer shifted uncomfortably. She was a junior analyst from one of the smaller firms, barely noticed at events like these. Her name was Clara. She'd spent most of the night invisible, blending into the corners, scribbling notes for her boss. But now, her eyes darted between Naomi's unshaken stance and the billionaire family's growing hostility. Finally, Clara pulled out her phone and hit record. Her hands trembled, but her voice carried enough for those nearest to hear. "This doesn't look right." She showed them something. "She belongs here." The ripple grew stronger. A man at a neighboring table leaned forward, murmuring to his companion, "I saw her invitation." She wasn't bluffing. His companion, a travel blogger with 500,000 followers, lifted his phone higher, streaming live without hesitation. The family noticed. The daughter in diamonds turned sharply, her smirk faltering as she spotted screens glowing across the hall. "Stop filming!" she snapped, her voice shrill. "This is private." But it was too late. Privacy had already evaporated. Naomi didn't move. Her eyes flicked briefly toward Clara, acknowledging her with the faintest nod. She didn't need a savior, but she knew the power of witnesses. And now, the story was no longer contained to mocking voices. It was in the hands of an audience. The son slammed his glass down again, this time harder. "Are you people blind? She's nobody. Just another pretender trying to sneak in." Clara's voice cut back, shaky but firm. "No, I saw her name on the guest list." She lifted her phone higher, her recording lens steady now. "She belongs." Gasps rippled through the tables. The guard froze mid-step. Even the orchestra faltered, a violin string breaking in the awkward pause. Naomi's lips curved, not into a smile, but into something sharper, a quiet acknowledgement that the tide was turning. The mother rose from her chair, her diamonds catching the light. "You don't get to decide who belongs here, little girl," she hissed at Clara. But Clara didn't lower her phone. "Neither do you," she whispered back. The hall shifted. What had been a stage for mockery was transforming into a theater for justice, and the audience guests, staff, strangers online were already choosing their side. Naomi remained silent, her stillness more commanding than any speech. She didn't need to fight for dignity. Others were beginning to fight for it with her. The mother's hiss still lingered in the air when her husband pushed back his chair, the scrape of polished wood against marble louder than the orchestra's halted notes. His voice boomed across the hall, practiced in boardrooms but now dripping with entitlement. "This is our night, our deal, and I will not have it ruined by a distraction." He didn't say the word, but everyone heard the weight he wanted to add. The guard straightened again, emboldened by the order. He stepped closer, his hand twitching near Naomi's arm. Phones lifted higher, lenses glowing red in the chandelier light. "Sir," Naomi said quietly, her voice even, "touch me, and you'll regret it." That sentence, calm and sharp as glass, froze him mid-step. He glanced around. Too many witnesses, too many recordings. Still, the family pressed. The daughter slammed her champagne flute onto the table, spilling gold liquid across white linen. "This is insane. She's making a scene. Get her out." From across the hall, a man's voice cut in. "She's not the one making a scene, you are." Heads turned. It was an older guest, a silver-haired investor with a reputation for blunt honesty. His phone was already pointed at the family. "The world is watching. Think very carefully." The son sneered, leaning forward. "The world doesn't care about her. She's nobody." But even as he spoke, notifications buzzed across nearby phones. Clara's video was climbing, shares multiplying. A live stream title glowed on one screen. Discrimination at $750 M Gala. Comments were flooding in, real-time outrage spilling into the hall. The event manager, a stiff man in a tailored suit, rushed in from the side. His face was flushed, his earpiece buzzing. "What's going on here? This gala is private." His eyes landed on Naomi, and his tone sharpened. "Ma'am, you need to leave immediately before we call the authorities." Naomi turned her gaze on him, unblinking. "Authorities? For attending a gala I was invited to?" The manager's jaw tightened. "We don't tolerate imposters." The words hung heavy, dripping with the same venom she'd heard since childhood. Naomi felt the old heat rise inside her, the familiar burn of being erased in public. But she didn't let it show. She steadied her breath, letting silence answer where anger might have flared. The guard shifted again, caught between the command of the powerful family and the weight of the recording phones. Guests murmured louder now, the hum of dissent building like a storm. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her stillness was louder than their shouting. And though the family still believed they held the floor, the truth was undeniable. Control of the room was already slipping from their hands. The tension had reached a knife's edge. Guests held their breath, phones poised, as if the entire hall was waiting for a verdict. The billionaire son provided it, reckless and loud. He lunged forward, snatched the champagne glass Naomi had been holding, and yanked it out of her hand so violently the liquid splashed across the marble floor. His grin widened as he lifted the empty crystal toward the crowd. "See? Not a guest, just a server who doesn't know her place." Gasps rippled through the hall. The sound was sharper than the orchestra's strings, sharper than the clink of crystal. A woman near the back whispered, horrified, "Did he really just—" But her voice was drowned by the son's mocking laughter. The guard moved again, closer this time, emboldened by the family's brazenness. He reached for Naomi's arm, his grip ready. But before contact could be made, Naomi's voice cut through the chaos like steel slicing silk. "Do not touch me." It wasn't shouted. It wasn't pleaded. It was absolute. The kind of tone that makes men in suits stop mid-stride. The kind that carries authority no title card can contain. The mother sneered, standing now with her diamonds flashing under the chandelier. "Enough of this circus. Get her out before she humiliates herself further." But the humiliation wasn't Naomi's anymore. It belonged to them. Across the hall, Clara's phone trembled in her hands, her live stream exploding with comments. "This is disgusting. Who treats people like this in public? Is that Naomi Carter?" The event manager stepped in again, face red, voice raised. "Ma'am, you are trespassing. You've been asked to leave politely. Refusal means you'll be escorted." Naomi lifted her chin, her eyes steady on him. "Escorted? From an event funded by my family's company?" The words landed heavy. A murmur spread, uncertain at first, then sharper. Guests began piecing it together. The Carter name, the deal rumored in whispers, the quiet young woman they had underestimated. The son scoffed, refusing to hear it. He gestured wildly at Naomi's dress, her calm face, her silence. "Look at her. Do you really think she belongs here? People like her never do." And with that sentence, the room split. Some gasped, some lowered their eyes, but others, phones in hand, captured every syllable. It wasn't just arrogance anymore. It was evidence. Naomi's pulse didn't quicken. Her breath stayed even. She had expected this, maybe not the glass ripped from her hand, maybe not the guard's looming presence, but the pattern was always the same. Dismissal, denial, disrespect, and tonight, as the family's laughter began to falter under the weight of witnesses, she knew their downfall had already begun. The glass lay shattered on the marble, champagne dripping like wasted gold. The son smirked, thinking he had won the room, but Naomi didn't bend. She didn't step back. Instead, she reached calmly into her clutch and drew out her phone once more. She held it to her ear, her voice steady as a blade. "Dad, cancel the deal now." For a heartbeat, the room froze. The words weren't shouted, yet they carried across the hall with a clarity that silenced even the orchestra. The guard paused mid-step. The mother's diamonded hand, mid-gesture, dropped slowly to her side. On the other end of the line, a voice responded. Calm, firm, immediate. Understood. The single word echoed like a verdict. Naomi lowered the phone, her expression unreadable. Around her, The guests began whispering louder, the murmurs swelling into a tide. Did she just... She said cancel the deal. Wait, isn't her father? The billionaire father let out a short, incredulous laugh. Oh, please. You expect us to believe a call from her can undo a contract of this size? His voice wavered, just slightly, betraying the first crack in his certainty. Naomi didn't answer him. She didn't need to. She simply stood taller, her silence now a weight pressing against every person in the hall. Then, it began. Phones buzzed across the tables. Notifications lit screens like sparks in the dark. A headline flashed on one display, then another. Carter Global withdraws from $750 M partnership. Gasps shot through the crowd, sharper than any music. The mother spun toward her husband, panic rising in her voice. What is this? That can't be, but it was. Confirmation after confirmation, push alerts rolling in, social feeds exploding with the same breaking story. Clara's livestream chat went wild. She wasn't bluffing. This is power. I can't believe I'm watching this live. The son's smirk collapsed into disbelief. No, that's impossible. His voice cracked, high and strained. Naomi's gaze swept over him, calm as ever. You thought silence meant submission. That was your last mistake. The guard stepped back now, uncertain. His authority dissolved in the glow of hundreds of recording phones. The event manager stammered, his words drying in his throat as the weight of reality settled in. Naomi didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to prove anything further. The empire they mocked her from was already crumbling brick by golden brick, and all it had taken was one sentence. The ballroom's chandeliers still glittered, but no one saw them anymore. Every gaze was glued to the glow of screens. The hum of incoming notifications rolled through the hall like distant thunder. Then the giant projection screens lining the stage flickered. The gala had planned to display investor slides and champagne toasts. Instead, bold black letters spread across a white background, Carter Global official statement. Effective immediately, Carter Global has withdrawn from the pending $750 million partnership. All negotiations are terminated. Gasps erupted. Some guests covered their mouths, others raised phones higher, capturing every word. The family froze, their power unraveling in real time before hundreds of witnesses. The son's face drained of color. No, this is staged. This is fake news. But the confirmation alerts kept coming. News anchors on muted TVs in the lounge scrolled the same headline. Journalists in the room were already typing furiously, their tweets firing into the world. The mother gripped the tablecloth until her knuckles blanched. This can't be legal. They can't do this so suddenly. Naomi's voice sliced clean through the noise. They can. And they just did. The billionaire father staggered a step forward, desperation seeping through his polished mask. Do you have any idea what you've done? Years of work gone in a second because of you? Naomi finally let a hint of steel flash in her eyes. No, because of you. Because you mocked the wrong person in the wrong room. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Guests who had stayed silent now whispered openly, some shaking their heads, others nodding in quiet approval. A man in a navy suit muttered, "That's justice." Clara's live stream was exploding. Comments poured in, witnessing history right now. Respect isn't negotiable. This is bigger than one gala. This is systemic. The daughter in diamonds tried to laugh, but it came out thin, brittle. So what? You ruin a deal and think that makes you powerful? Naomi turned her gaze on her, calm and unshaken. Power isn't ruining. Power is choosing who deserves access. Tonight, your family lost that access. The words fell like a gavel strike, final and unappealable. And in that moment, the gala was no longer theirs. It belonged to Naomi, to the witnesses, to the truth projected in towering letters for all to see. The room dissolved into chaos. Conversations that had once floated politely over champagne turned into sharp whispers and open stares. Phones were no longer discreet. They were raised high, broadcasting from every angle. The gala, meant to be a stage for triumph, had transformed into a theater of downfall. The billionaire's son stumbled back into his chair, his bravado leaking out of him like air from a punctured balloon. His jaw moved, but no sound came. The mother clutched her pearls as if jewelry could anchor her collapsing world. The father barked orders no one followed. Call legal. Get the board on the line. Shut this off now. But the projection screen kept blazing his failure across the hall. Naomi didn't move. She stood still, a single figure in yellow, calm amid the storm. She hadn't raised her voice, hadn't lashed out, yet the empire across from her was unraveling thread by golden thread. Guests shifted in their seats. Some recorded with satisfaction, murmuring, "Finally." Others looked uneasy, whispering, "This is going to be everywhere." And it already was. Clara's live stream numbers had exploded into the tens of thousands. Her chat scrolled faster than she could read. This family just lost $750 in real time. She said one sentence and ended them. Never underestimate silence. Journalists tweeted updates faster than champagne corks could ever pop. Screens around the world lit up with the headline, "Carter Global walks away from billionaire family deal." The daughter in diamonds tried to stand, her voice shaking. "This isn't fair! You can't humiliate us like this!" But Naomi's stillness was its own response. She didn't gloat, she didn't shout. She let the silence stretch, forcing the room to hear its own judgment. Then, from a corner table, applause began. Soft, steady, a single pair of hands clapping against the tide of murmurs. Another guest joined in, then another. Within seconds, the sound rolled through the hall, not wild or chaotic, but deliberate. Applause, not for spectacle, but for justice, served quietly. The father looked around, eyes darting like a trapped animal. "Stop this," he hissed. But his voice was lost in the wave of hands meeting, the echo bouncing off marble walls. Naomi remained unmoved. She didn't need their applause, but she accepted it for every moment someone like her had been mocked, dismissed, erased. Tonight, that ended. And though the family's world had collapsed in headlines and hashtags, Naomi's silence had spoken louder than their dynasty ever could. The applause hadn't fully died down when the projection screens flickered again. This time, it wasn't text, it was a face. Elijah Carter, the black CEO himself, appeared live on every towering display, his image larger than the chandeliers that glittered above. His suit was crisp, his gaze calm, his presence undeniable. The hall stilled instantly. Even the orchestra instruments lay silent, bows frozen mid-air. "Good evening," Elijah began, his voice resonant, deliberate. "I hadn't planned to attend tonight's gala, but circumstances changed. The billionaire family froze, the father's face drained, the mother's grip on her pearls tightening. Their empire's would-be partner was speaking directly to them and to everyone watching. My daughter," Elijah continued, his eyes shifting briefly toward Naomi, "came here with dignity, with grace, and she was mocked, diminished, treated as if her presence was unworthy." His tone never rose, yet it carried more weight than any outburst. "That is not a mistake. That is a pattern, and patterns have consequences." A murmur rolled through the room. Phones tilted higher. Live stream chats lit up like firestorm. Elijah leaned forward slightly. "Carter Global does not, and will never, do business with those who mock my bloodline." The words landed like thunder. Gasps echoed across the marble. The family's daughter let out a choked cry. The son shook his head violently, and the patriarch staggered back a step as if struck. Naomi didn't flinch. Her posture stayed steady, her silence an extension of her father's power. Elijah wasn't finished. Contracts can be signed in boardrooms, but respect is signed here. He tapped his chest once, slowly. "If you cannot offer that, you have nothing worth offering us." Applause broke again, louder this time. Not scattered, but unified, deliberate. Guests rose from their seats, some clapping, some recording, all bearing witness to a reckoning. The billionaire father tried one last desperate move. We can discuss this privately, Elijah. Don't let a misunderstanding destroy years of..." Elijah's eyes narrowed. A misunderstanding is when you misplace a name. This was humiliation, and humiliation has a price. The screen held his image steady, calm, immovable. Tonight, that price is your deal. Tomorrow, it may be more. Then, with a simple nod toward his daughter, he ended the call. The screens went dark, leaving the hall echoing with applause and gasps. Naomi stood taller. She hadn't raised her hand, hadn't raised her voice. Yet beside her father's words, her stillness had become the sharpest strike of all. The screens went black, but the echo of Elijah Carter's words lingered like thunder rolling off marble walls. For a moment, the gala stood in suspended silence, guests caught between disbelief and awe. Then the applause rose again, this time not polite or scattered, but a standing ovation, deliberate and unstoppable. Naomi Carter didn't bow. She didn't wave. She simply lifted her chin and let the weight of the moment settle. The yellow dress she wore seemed to glow brighter under the chandeliers, not because of its fabric, but because of what it now symbolized: resilience, dignity, defiance. Around her, guests whispered openly. She ended them without shouting. That's power. I'll never forget this night. Clara's live stream viewer count soared past 100,000. Comments poured in faster than her camera could focus. This is history in motion. Respect is not negotiable. Naomi just taught the world a lesson. The billionaire family sat in ruins at their own table. The father slumped, his face pale and damp, muttering to no one. The mother stared at her pearls as though they might shield her from humiliation. The son avoided every camera, his bravado shattered, while the daughter's mascara streaked down her cheeks. Their empire hadn't just lost a deal, it had lost its mask. Naomi finally spoke, her voice low, yet carrying through every corner of the hall. Respect isn't charity. It isn't a favor. It's the baseline of human dignity. And tonight, it was denied. She let the words hang before continuing, sharper now. But what you thought was silence was never surrender. It was judgment waiting for its moment. A hush swept the hall, heavy, reverent. She took one step forward, her heels clicking like punctuation. You mocked me thinking I was powerless. Instead, you revealed your own weakness, the arrogance that blinds you. Tonight, you didn't just lose a contract. You lost the right to be taken seriously. Applause thundered again, rolling through the marble chamber. Guests rose to their feet, some clapping with fervor, others with solemn respect. The hall itself felt transformed. No longer a stage for wealth's performance, but a tribunal where dignity had prevailed. Naomi looked once toward Clara, then toward the sea of phones recording her every breath. "Let this be remembered," she said, her final words crisp as stone. "Silence, when rooted in truth, is the loudest answer of all." The ovation swelled, rising like a wave, carrying her higher than any diamond or contract ever could. And as the billionaire family shrank into the shadows of their own disgrace, Naomi Carter stood unshaken at the center of the hall, calm, composed, triumphant. Justice had spoken, not with fury, but with finality.